everyone, Simply Zoological here. Before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you for hanging out with us today. So, as you can see, we are starting a new project. This project will be called Saguaro Sanctuary. And here in a minute, I will tell you how I came up with the name for it and everything. But anyways, so this project, it will be very similar to Bushland because I loved the idea of what Bushland had to offer, basically in the terms of you I used only the Australian animals and the Oceania pack animals, and which we're still going to keep that same idea. But I do know that when now that we have the barnyard pack, when you search for Australian or Oceania animals, the barnyard pack animals come up. We will not be incorporating those in the zoo. So I just want to clarify that those animals will not be in here. We may one day do like an actual farm kind of thing, but I just really haven't been all that inspired to do a farm, even though I've watched a million and one videos on building a chicken coop and a goat yard and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really been that inspired. But anyways, so with the zoo, it will be definitely a more under budget type of zoo, and it will be a little bit more scrappy. As you can see, we are using the platforms. I believe possibly they came in the Australian pack. I don't really know. If you know, let me know in the comments below. I'm really bad about what pieces came in what pack. Same thing with animals. I don't really know what animals came in what pack. If it doesn't say, then I don't know. But anyways, so again, this will be more of a scrappy type of zoo. It will be, and as you can see back behind this ticket booth that I'm building right now, we do have the layout of the zoo, so I know what animals will be going where and all this kind of stuff. And so with that in mind, I will be building what habitat I want to build when I want to build, because with Bushland, I got very burnt out. And I think to a point, one of the reasons I did get so burnt out was the fact that I got sloppy because I would realize, oh crap, I don't have a video for this week, but I need to get a video out. And so I would force myself to build in this zoo when I didn't have anything in mind to build for. And so I would just kind of put it off all week until I was forced to make something, and then I would make something that was somewhat okay, but not up to but it wasn't up to the standards that I thought it should have been up to. And so we're kind of redoing that. I wouldn't say we're recreating Bushland, because we're not. We're taking the idea of Bushland and creating a different zoo. Does that make sense? Sorry, my dog is shaking back behind me. She's on our bed. But anyways, so here as you can see, I found the inspiration for those ticket booths off Pinterest. Pinterest is like my holy grail of where I find my inspiration from, because I believe all I searched was like rustic ticket booth, or I searched something to the effect of like a rustic ticket booth or something like that, and saw a picture of a ticket booth that was literally just like platforms, or it wasn't even a ticket booth, it was just like a little shelter kind of thing, and I was like, that'd be good for a ticket booth, so that's what I did. But here I am creating it's like a little mini garden area in between the ticket booths, and I change. Yep, here you go. I add the cassowary in instead, because I thought that fit a little bit better. And then the sign that I made over to the left of this ticket, or the right of this ticket booth, we use that as the entrance sign. But I do create a whole nother welcome sign that, again, saw it off Pinterest. or I saw a picture that looked very similar to it on Pinterest, and I kind of took my own inspiration and made my own thing. But anyways, so I believe here in just a second we should be getting into the, yep, here we go, the gift shop. So this gift shop, I love it. I love it, but I don't do an interior for it. I mean, even right now, after the video is done, there's still literally nothing in there except for the checkout counter. And so, I mean, if you want me to make an interior, let me know and I can show that in a video. But otherwise, I'll just leave it empty and I'll let y'all kind of decorate it how you want to. I'm not, because I don't really care for doing interiors in I don't care for making interiors. I mean, if I have to, I will. And with TVEP, I feel like I've done a lot better about making somewhat decent interiors. But here, we do move this because again, this was supposed to be like a shipping container that we reused, or we took some of the pieces from the shipping container and made it into the gift shop. But because right in front of where the shipping container will be is where the little penguins habitat will be. And so I do move, because the little penguins, so their habitat will be right in front of this. And then I'm thinking off to the right of the little penguin, when you're looking at the penguin habitat from the view of the gift shop, over to the side of it will be I'm thinking probably again a shipping container that we revamped into a food truck. I found a really nice picture that I liked off of the off Pinterest again, that I thought was really nice, and I thought would be good to, yeah, right here is where we're gonna do the food truck. And so I'm thinking we'll move I don't do it right. I don't do it where y'all can see it, but you'll see where I move it to in another clip. But I do move it over to the right side of the ticket booths. And here I was struggling to get the pathing, because with the pathing with the border, I love this border. I will use this border probably for the whole entire zoo. But with this border, I had to raise the, I believe I used the Jetty Betty platforms for that right there, for the decking of the gift shop. And so I had to raise it up, but then it looked weird on the inside. But we get it all figured out and get it all situated. Again, once I move it, it kind of works itself out. But anyways, so here we are starting the welcome sign. Well, the welcome sign and car park entrance, because again, we're going to have a parking lot. Well, we may have a parking lot. I'm thinking I'll probably just get one off the Steam Workshop and put it in here, because I don't like doing parking lots either. If y'all want to see me make a parking lot, you can let me know in the comments below and I'll make one. But otherwise, I'll just probably get one off the workshop and call it quits, so y'all won't ever really even see it. But here again, the inspiration for this came off of Pinterest. I saw this, I searched up, I believe it was like welcome sign or something like that. And I just searched like welcome sign or something. And I saw this picture of this welcome sign that it was really big over to one side, and it tapered off to the more further right it got, the more it kind of tapered off. But I decided to kind of put my own spin on it and kind of make it like the diamond type of design. And again, I use the custom fonts, and I love, I believe these are Christina's fonts, and I love her fonts. But the only thing with any custom font really is that they have such long back ends that you have to figure out a way to to cover it. And so what I do is I take the conservation slat that I used, and I used the conservation. I believe it's like the panel is technically what it's this piece that I'm messing with right now. I use those as the sides, and I make like a whole solid back instead of like I was gonna do copy it on top of itself. But so we get that all done and everything, but excuse me. But yeah, so we'll get this and we'll make it to where again it's not all the same, and then I believe I change it to black, and it looks really nice when I get done because I add some like signs on the inside. You'll see it here in a minute, but I add signs and stuff to make it look a little bit, it looks really nice. And again, I changed the wording car park to welcome because I take this exact thing and I duplicate it and I change that text from car park to welcome. So we have one that's right in front of the cassowary that is in between the ticket booths, and then we have the one that tells the people driving by like, hey, the parking lot's right here. But so here, so I use the saguaro cactus because again, the name is Saguaro Sanctuary. So to kind of resemble that, I use the saguaro cactus sign. And with that being said, I do want to go ahead and tell you, so my idea behind the naming of this zoo called Saguaro Sanctuary, my idea was that maybe the people who previously owned this land, they farmed and planted a bunch of saguaro cacti on this land. And now in our map there aren't any, but as we go on, we'll place them and we'll act as if they were already there, kind of thing. But anyway, so my thinking was if we take those and we're not allowed to acting as if the saguaro cacti that we will place were already there, we have to kind of work around them and stuff like that. And we have to kind of keep that in mind and preserve the saguaro cacti. Hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. Before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you for hanging out with me today. So as you can see, we are back with an episode of Saguaro Sanctuary, and this episode we are building for the little penguin. And this is my first time building for these guys, and oh my goodness, are they so cute. But really quick, I do want to say thank you. One, thank you for watching this video, but two, if you have any name suggestions for these guys, please leave them down in the comments below. We do end up with 4 boys and 4 girls. We start with a total of, with 2 mated pairs and then 1 elderly penguin. And so we do start with a total of 6 penguins to begin with, but we end up gaining 3 babies during the course of this video. So please leave your name suggestions in the comments. Again, 4 boys, 4 girls. But here after a while, I will tell you kind of the story of how we acquired them. But let's go ahead and get into the build first. So here you can see we are building what would resemble a backstage area. Again, it is used by the penguins, but when I first started this build, I did not realize that the penguins could use the burrow. I didn't realize that until I started adding in their enrichment and everything. And when I saw that, I got so excited. So of course we do place a burrow for them, but they are allowed to, but they do use this building as well. Because once I realized that, I kind of debated on whether to go ahead and delete that building and then delete the building and then just have it as like a fully blocked off exhibit or something. But I decided against it because I think what I'm probably gonna do, because the saltwater crocodile will sit just back behind this exhibit, And so I'm thinking what I may do is I'll connect the that building, I'll extend it out and I'll make it a little bit bigger to incorporate the backstage for the saltwater crocodile. But really quick, I do want to say I do realize that when you saw when the episode started, we did start with the water and everything already done. And that is because it took me ages to get the water area how I wanted it. Because again, me and terrain work do not go together at all in this game. I don't know what it is, but we do not get along. And I mean, there's some people out there who are amazing with terrain work and everything, and I am not one of them. So please do not watch my videos expecting for some amazing mountain in the background or anything, because it probably won't happen. But anyways, here we are creating the viewing gallery. We do end up adding a shade structure over here, which also actually the shade structure that we built was inspired off of a picture, but the picture that I used to create this the shade structure also inspired this entire build, like the exhibit and everything, along with the idea of the food truck over to the left. Which, with that being said, or to the right, sorry, with that being said, the food truck will actually be in another episode. Because when I sat down to build this, I did go ahead and I built this exhibit along with the food truck at the same time. So it was all it was a multiple recording split up because I took breaks and stuff. But for the most part, I built it all right there together. But when I sat down to create the video and get it all edited and everything, I realized that the video was 30 minutes long, so I deleted the food truck build, and that is gonna be its own video that will come out in the next episode of Saguaro Sanctuary. But anyways, here we are with we're doing some terrain work. We're working on getting the terrain, like, their needs met, because I do turn their terrain need on in this zoo, because I wanted them to deep dive, and I wasn't when I first got their deep diving to work, I had the terrain off, but they wouldn't deep dive. So I don't know if it was just the fact that I didn't really have their deep diving working, or if the fact that with that now they can't deep dive if the terrain requirements aren't on. I don't know. But anyways, they do deep dive. We do have some cinematics of it and everything, but we do have to turn on their terrain need and everything, which isn't all that bad. I don't mind that. I kind of planned on doing that anyways. But and then here is when I realized that, oh crap, the penguin can use the burrow. And so I add that, not right now, but when we start the foliage, I believe, is when I add that here in just a second. But they will have the water jet, and then they will also have this disco ball along with the sprinkler, which there's something really cool that I do with the sprinkler that I am quite happy about, but I'll explain that when we get there. But here you can see I placed the burrow, and I just added some plants around it to kind of set it back into the background, because I tried a couple times to kind of like raise the ground above it, but it didn't really work out how I wanted it. So I just decided to add rocks around it, rocks and plants. That they fix everything. So again, we're gonna sit down at the guest level and place the big items where I think there needs to be a big item, and the smaller items just kind of go around, and I can zoom over and everything from the bird's eye view. But for big items, I like to stay down at the guest level, because you don't want your big items to be imposing on the view of the exhibit at all. So keep that in mind if y'all are ever wondering why maybe your guests aren't happy with the view of the animals or anything. But here you can see I took the grass patch that I created in the first episode of Saguaro Sanctuary, and I am just placing that around for, again, that is such a good tip. If you have, like, if you don't like to constantly place grass on top of grass on top of grass, make a big patch of it. Like, literally, just make a big patch, and then you can place it wherever you want to. You can rotate it and everything, and it is so much faster. Trust me, it is so much faster. And I really need to start doing that more. The last time I did that, I believe, was in Meridian Zoo, and I think that's one reason I didn't do it, because with Meridian Zoo, I got very burnt out as we got closer to the end of the zoo and everything. So, and I felt like the plants and everything were very repetitive. But anyways, here I am going to take the underwater temple plant, and I do realize that these plants are not from Australia, but with this zoo, I'm planning on using any desert plant and any couple tropical plants, but desert and grassland plants mainly are the only filters that I'll use. At least for the exterior of the builds and stuff. For like the interior of the habitats and everything, I will probably use primarily their habitat required plants. But again, that is very subject to change. And then here, just adding in a little bit more of a terrain and everything. And here, so this, really quickly, I want to say this, I am so happy with this sprinkler. And what I do is I take this decal. I don't even know what it's called. It's just, if you search up decal, it pulls up. But what you do is you take this decal and you add I believe it's the moss, or you can add really whatever decals you want around it, and just recolor them to the ground texture that you have placed around it, and it creates like a puddle. And I saw this tip from Sparrow. She is an amazing content creator on YouTube. So her link will be down in the description below. If you would love to go check her out, please do. Again, she is amazing at what she does. And she is actually currently working on a zoo very similar to this one, I might add. So if you like this type of style, definitely go check out her builds over there. But here, we're going to start on the shade structure. And this part is kind of hectic, so it may be a little bit hard to follow, and I do apologize for that. But basically what happens is, after I get the basic blueprint of the shade structure done, I copy it on top of itself, and then I don't like it because it looks too busy. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute, because I do like a crisscross type of thing with the legs and everything, and it looks really busy. And so I delete it, and we do get it all figured out, and it does look really good afterwards, but I sadly will not be here for that, because we have just a few minutes left. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and remind you that, again, our penguins need names. We have, again, 4 boys and 4 girls, 1 baby boy and 2 baby girls. So they need names. And also, really quick, so the way we acquired these penguins, actually, originally it started out the group of the 6 adults, the 5 young ones and the 1 elder one. Well, what happened was they went to go get some fish to eat for dinner, because they were hungry. Well, when they did, the tides got really bad, and storms started to pick up and everything, so they kind of got sideswiped and got off track of how they were supposed to get home. So they ended up on our side of they ended up over close to us, and so we end up taking them in, and we will hold them, or we will try to help them as best we can until we can figure out where they originated from. Hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. Before we get into the video, let me just start by saying thank you for hanging out with me today. So as you can see, we are back with another episode of Saguaro Sanctuary, and this episode was actually supposed to be part of episode 2 with the little penguin. I was going to have the little penguin and the food truck build put together in one, but when I went to make the video, it was like 30 minutes long, and lately I've been trying to keep my videos about 15 to 17 minutes or so, because those seem to do a little bit better. So anyways, so with as you can tell, we are building the food truck, which is located right next to the little penguin habitat that we built last time. And again, feel free to leave your name suggestions down in the comments below, whether it's for the little penguin or whether it's for any other animal that we will have in the zoo. But I do want to remind you that we will only have the Australian animals, and we will not have any barnyard pack animals. So please keep that in mind when you are giving your name suggestions down in the comments. So the story behind this build. So my thought process was, when our team went to go look for parts for the little penguin, because, you know, we got them really, really fast, and we technically weren't even supposed to be taking any animals in yet, but they just kind of came to us and we couldn't turn them down. So when our team went to go look for some parts really quickly to build a little penguin habitat, they came across a shipping container graveyard. Because as you remember, this plot of land that we are using, that we've bought, it was a saguaro cacti farm. And so they used those shipping containers to ship out there, whether it was to ship out or to ship in their seeds or whatever. And so we found those shipping containers and we shipped them of all of their usable parts, and we now have a pile of shipping container parts and bits and pieces that we will be using for builds to come, whether it's for other shipping containers, whether it's for an actual restaurant maybe, or a restroom stop. I don't really know yet, but we will be using all of those parts that we have found. And so that's basically the story behind the shipping container, and why we will have, because we will have more shipping containers throughout the zoo. So, and also with that being said, this build, this build will be up on the workshop on Saturday. So again, we're just recently starting to upload our weekly builds on Saturdays to the workshop. So again, if you aren't already, go follow us over on Instagram, and also here on the channel, so that way you can have access to all our community posts, and that way you'll be able to see them whenever I post that our weekly build is now live on the workshop. So my inspiration for this build came off of Pinterest as usual, but I went on Pinterest and I just searched shipping container food truck, I think is what I searched, or maybe I just searched food truck, I don't really know. But I came across this photo of this food truck that had an awning very similar to this one, I might add, but it had, and so I've seen food trucks where their awnings, they can be locked. And so that's what I did with those hinge pieces, was to act as if they can be locked whenever someone's not manning them, or someone's not in there to work them or whatever. But here I can't, again, my reference picture that I was using, it had this small like service window where they would pick up their food, and they would order at the big window and pick up their food at the small window. Well, I originally was going to have it as a full sliding glass door, but I quickly changed that to a drive-through window. And so I had to go on the web on Google and search a picture of a drive-through window because, even though you see them all the time, you forget what they look like when you're actually trying to build one. And so I went, and it takes me a minute to actually get the drive-through window look because I didn't realize until I was almost done with the drive-through window itself that the two where the door is, where the drive-through window, they have the door and then they have an actual glass panel usually. Well, the door side is put back further than the actual glass window, so they overlap whenever you slide the door back. So once I add that piece in, it comes out a lot better than what it looks like now. But also the reference picture that I was using for this drive-through window, that the door side was clear glass and the window side was like a one-way glass kind of thing. And so I went back and forth for quite a while on whether to use the one-way glass or the clear glass. And ultimately, I settled for the one-way glass on the right side and the thin glass panel on the left side where the door is. Because on the door, I used the small glass panel that has the hinges on it, and I overlap it to where you see the hinges on both of the sides. You'll kind of see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Whenever I explain it really confusingly, so you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, so it looks as if the window is attached to the door on both of the sides and everything. And then, oh my goodness, the sign. Oh, this took me probably, I'd say 30-40 minutes, honestly, because I used Christina's, I believe this is her large modern font. I really don't know. But I was originally going to use her small 3D font. And when I made the sign, it looked so tiny. And I was like, that's too small. So I used this font, and it looks so much better. And so we add the sign for the pickup and a sign for the order. And I was originally going to have the order sign to be above the awning, but then I got to thinking, I was like, but then they won't even be able to see it. So we make the order go vertical, which I think it turns out so good. I am so pleased with this build. I mean, this whole zoo so far is just, I'm in love with it. And but yeah, so this is basically really all I do besides an interior, which yeah, I do an interior. I actually add in, I don't make any of the stuff. I get it all off the workshop because I don't have the patience like some people do to make a stove and pots and pans and all that sort of stuff. So I just got it all off the workshop and I just place it in there. And I mean, it looks really good. I'm so happy with how it turns out. But we should be starting that here relatively soon. I believe we do the flooring first, though, which with the flooring, oh my goodness. So as y'all saw, when I first put in the counter, I sunk it into the ground a little bit because with this zoo, with this sanctuary, I'm not really going based, like, I don't want it to be 4 meters because 4 meters is super tall. I mean, even 3 meters is a little bit tall, but it's more manageable. So I sunk the counter down into the ground, so it kind of threw me off whenever I went to place the flooring. And then here, we're just adding in the stove, the counter, some trash cans, stuff like that for the kitchen area. and I absolutely love how this looks whenever I get done. You can go to the order counter, and it looks so good from the back. Oh, it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. But anyways, with that being said, it looks like we have just a couple more minutes left. So really quickly, before I run out of time, I just want to say, again, please feel free to leave your name suggestions for any of the animals we will have in this zoo down in the comments below. But to remind you again, we will not have any of the barnyard pack animals. It'll only be like the dingo, the koala, the kangaroo, the wallaby, those animals in the sanctuary. Simply Zoological here. Before we get into the video, let me just start by saying thank you for hanging out with me today. So as you can see, this is a brand new project for Saguaro Sanctuary. And I am so excited and extremely happy with how this turned out. But really quickly, let me just say, okay, so this project, we will not have a upload this weekend for today's build, because since this is a nocturnal house or a night house, I am going to upload it to the workshop once we have the full thing finished. And with that being said, this will be a 4 or 5 part series, like mini series within the Saguaro Sanctuary series, of just us making the night house. And so with that being said, if you have any name suggestions for the nocturnal house, let me know down in the comments below, because I would love to be able to name it and give it a name or something. But today I will go ahead and tell you that today we will add in the Tasmanian devil. And when we get to them, I will explain their story of how they came to us and all that kind of stuff. But right now, we are working on the front entrance to the night house. And I had to keep in mind that Saguaro Sanctuary is more of a under budget. We have to scrap for our materials and everything like that. So I went with a lot of wood, some iron, all that, like corrugated metal, sorry, not iron, corrugated metal, and everything that we'll be using for this build. And also, really quickly, so the walls, the front stays green, but the side walls, all that changes. I played off camera with that for probably 30 minutes or so, just trying to figure out what colors I wanted for the exterior, because it was just so repetitive. And but I end up loving what we end up doing and everything. And I mean, I think I even changed the corrugated metal from the brown to more of a cream that's 3D, the 3D printed wall from the conservation pack. But anyways, here we are just working on the front entrance, and my reference photo that I was using for this build, when I saw it, I knew, I mean, I've had this planned out for, I'd say, a month or so now, because I found my my reference picture probably a month or two ago on Pinterest, and I was like, I know I want this for my night house for Saguaro Sanctuary. And so I've been waiting to use it, and then today I was finally able to get to recreate it with my own spin on it, obviously, because I don't like to do 1-for-1 recreations, but I do I like to use reference photos though. But here I'm just taking I used a lot of the Indonesian wood. I've never been the biggest fan of that until this build. Usually I would just use the conservation wood or something like that, but this build, I'm absolutely in love with the whole Indonesian set that we have. So, I mean, all the pieces in that are great. I mean, I even use those pieces on the inside for the walls and everything. I use the Indonesian set and everything, and I absolutely love it. But just recoloring the wood and everything. And then here we are now on the interior, and as you can see, all the colors have changed and the walls have changed and everything. But so for the interior walls, I go with corrugated metal, plaster, and then the Indonesian wall, the brick wall piece. And I use the 4x4 plaster piece. I turn that to a not black, but like more of like a charcoal gray, charcoal kind of color. So it's just like a step down from black. And then I take the Indonesian what's that piece called? I think it's the um framing or siding or something like that. I used that as a barrier between the Indonesian temple and the wall piece, and then the corrugated metal, and then just recolor the temple and then the metal, and it looked. I am absolutely in love with how the wall came out. And then here we are now working on the Tasmanian Devil exhibit. So while we're working on this, let me go ahead and explain a little bit about the Tasmanian Devil. So in Saguaro Sanctuary, we have one boy and two girls. They are all on contraceptives because they are all siblings. And if you don't know anything about Saguaro Sanctuary, we take in and rescue animals from that are native to Australia that we have found or somebody has brought in saying, hey, they need a home. We take them in and rehabilitate them or whatever until they can go back out to the wild. However, with these guys, they will not be going back out to the wild because they are still, in my mind, they are still babies. And so they will stay with us for their whole entire lifetime. And we actually found them, our team found them on their way in from work one day. They found them and they found their mom. Their mom, you could tell she was sick, and I'll explain about her sickness in just a minute. But she was really sick, and so they wanted to get her and her babies here as fast as they could to start rehabilitating her and trying to get her better. But sadly, she ended up passing away on the way from where they originally found her to the sanctuary. And so she actually had DFT, which, if you don't know what DFT is, it is a very rampant cancer that spreads through the Tasmanian Devil. And it is actually the #1 cause of Tasmanian Devil deaths and the biggest reason as to why they are extinct, or not extinct, endangered. And DFT stands for devil facial tumor. And what it does is it spreads through being bitten. One devil transfers it to another devil by biting, feeding, or even mating sometimes. And it spreads so fast, and it causes lesions and tumors on their mouth and sometimes even on other parts of their bodies that cause the devil to not want to eat. It hurts, and so they eventually starve and eventually pass away. And that's exactly what happened to their mom. And so she had it, and it was really, really bad. And so she ended up passing away on the way home, or on the way to our sanctuary. But we have her babies. They're safe. They are perfectly healthy. They have no cancer whatsoever. So we're going to hopefully allow them to live out their life happy, healthy, and hopefully a very long life as well while they are with us. But anyways, so that's how we acquired these Tasmanian Devils, and there are 3 of them, 1 boy, 2 girls. If you have any name suggestions for them, leave those down in the comments, because I would really like to give all of our animals a name, even with the common wombats we still need names for those guys too, so leave those down in the comments as well. But anyways, here we are just working on the planting, and as you saw, again, I used that Indonesian wood, or not the Indonesian wood, the Indonesian brick wall for the fence barrier, and I absolutely loved how that turned out. I was excuse me, I was originally going to use the lava rock, like the brick lava rock that we got. I believe it came in the Oceania pack. I'm not really sure. But I was originally going to use that as the fence barrier, but it didn't quite look right, and then I switched it over to the brick, and it looks so much better. Hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. Before we get into the video, let me just start by saying thank you for hanging out with me today. So as you can see, this video, it is a little bit shorter than our usual. I usually like to keep them about 15 to 17 minutes long. This one is just about 9 minutes long. So with that being said, I have had a crazy busy week this week and last week too. I barely even had time to get this video done. I mean, I didn't even upload it on Wednesday. I'm actually going to be changing our upload days to Saturdays. I'm hoping that will kind of help with these last couple weeks that I've been having that have been so crazy. I'm thinking that may kind of take a little bit of the pressure off. So I'm gonna start uploading on Saturdays, and then we will do our workshop upload on Sundays. But anyways, let me go ahead and get into the video. So this build, if you don't know, we are building for the kiwi, and Saguaro Sanctuary actually acquires these kiwis from the illegal pet trade, basically. There was somebody had these two kiwis in their house that they've had since they were baby eggs, and somebody else found out and was like, hey, that's illegal. So they called the cops, and the cops took them and gave them over to us. And with that being said, since the person who did have these kiwis before we acquired them, since they were eggs and they basically raised them, we most likely will not be releasing these animals into the wild, since they are already so they are captive, but they're not captive because technically they did come from the wild, so they do still have a little bit of that instinct that they could get back, but it would take a long time. And even though Saguaro Sanctuary and their team will do everything that they possibly can to help them get that natural hunting instinct back, it is most likely that we will just end up keeping them for the rest of their time being. So anyways, with that being said, let me go ahead and tell you about the kiwi themselves. So the kiwi is actually the smallest flightless bird, with feathers that resemble a shaggy coat of brown hair. The kiwi's long, curved bill is unique to the bird world in having the nostrils located near the tip, which allows them to smell their prey rather than see it. And they can live up to 50 years in the wild, but only about 30 years in captivity, which that's a 20-year difference. That's a lot. And they can weigh 4 to 7 pounds depending on whether they are female or if they're male, and they can stand anywhere from 1.5 to 2 feet tall. But also, a really interesting fact that I didn't know, they are actually ranked second in egg size to body mass ratio, coming in just underneath the ostrich, which if you don't know what that means, the kiwi, when it's time for them to have babies, they lay one single egg, and that egg is actually, I believe it's 15% of their body mass. And that is crazy big for such a little bird. That's crazy. So they deserve second place in body mass to egg ratio. But anyways, that's a little bit about the kiwi. And I will leave, I got my information from, I believe it was San Diego Zoo's website. I'll link it down below. I use San Diego Zoo's, and then I use another website that I use to get my facts and stuff for animals and stuff from. I'll leave those both linked down below, so y'all can go and check and read up on the kiwi yourselves if you would like to, or any other animal for that matter. But anyways, as you can see here, we are working on the terraforming, but we just got finished with the enrichment. And oh my goodness, I struggled for a good little bit trying to figure out where I wanted all of it to go. Because this front space is so small, they don't have a lot of room to place your enrichment items. And there is a backstage, but it's not decorated right now. So you don't see it in this episode at all, but when and if I can upload this to the workshop after we get all the exhibits done, then I will make sure that the backstage for this exhibit is fully functioning and everything. Hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. I just want to start by saying thank you for watching, and I hope you're having a good day. Today we are back with another episode of Saguaro Sanctuary, and I do know that we have been kind of heavy in this zoo for the last couple weeks, but that's mainly just because, one, I'm excited about this project that we're doing, but also I've kind of hit a lull in TVEP where the next exhibit I want to implement, I haven't quite figured out the logistics for it quite yet. But I'm hoping I can get that figured out relatively shortly. We can get back into that zoo soon. But anyways, today we are building for a saltwater crocodile. We will only have one single male, and his name is Rex. So I will get to his story in a little bit, and when I get to his story, you'll kind of understand why he already has a pre-existing name. But with that being said, I do want to really quickly note that we are currently working on his underwater viewing area. And his underwater viewing area is actually directly off of the back side of our night house. So with that being said, I will not upload this exhibit to the workshop tomorrow. I will upload it whenever we get done with the night house completely, since it still technically is a part of the night house. But I do want to note really quickly that I am extremely happy with how this nature wall came out. I am very proud of myself in kind of going into the TVEP modernist ecological style for this right here, but I add little misters and stuff, and you'll see that here in a little bit, and I'll explain more about that when we get there. But I do want to note also that his underwater viewing, water in this game does not work how you want it to. So we will just kind of skip through me making his underwater viewing area, just because I think it took me probably about an hour just for the underwater viewing itself. So in total, this build took me, I would say, probably 10 hours or so, to be honest, just in between I worked on this build over the course of 2 or 3 days, I think. And within those 2 or 3 days, I spent probably 2 or 3 hours a day working on this exhibit. And a big part of it was honestly the interior. The interior, which you're seeing right now, is it took 1 day total, and then the rest of his actual exhibit took another day or so. But right now I'm just going around the nature wall with some temple pieces, and at first I was intentionally leaving these more that black charcoal color like in the night house, but I do go in and change that because I add a wall right here with a door for guests to go through the door to get to the underwater viewing. So that way this feels completely separate from the night house. Even though it's in the same building, when you walk through, it's a totally different atmosphere. And so I do go in and change the black to more of a mossy kind of color and everything, and I jump through that, so you'll see that here in a little bit. But right now I am adding in some misters, and I spent probably good 2-3 minutes alone trying to figure out what I actually wanted to use, because I originally planned on running water back behind the plants, but I didn't really like how it turned out, so I decided on going with more of a mister effect. And so my inspiration for that was actually when I was a little kid. The house we lived in growing up, it was because I'm originally from Texas. It got super hot in the summers, and we would be outside playing all day long. So my parents, they put up it's what you call a mister hose, and it's just this black hose that has holes in it, and it just kind of sprays mist however long you want it to. Some of them you can put on timer, some of them just you plug in and take out of the outside spigot. But that was my inspiration for this right here. And for the hose part, I'm using the European fan cables, I believe, just recolored to the charcoal color that we use in the night house. And then the misters, obviously the special effect misters, and then the walkthrough exhibit hanging basket planters, I believe, or hanging planter basket chains, I believe is what they're actually called. And then I did use I've seen this trick from a couple different creators where they use, to place things faster, they use the position snap, I believe is what it's called, in your settings whenever you have a piece selected. And that was my first time using it, and it does work a lot faster, and I will definitely start using that more often. But here I wanted to create a little bitty step up, and you can see all the colors have changed and everything now. But I wanted to create like a little step up for like little kids, so that way they could get to step up and see Rex in his water and everything. And he doesn't actually deep dive, sadly, just because I didn't quite realize that his deep dive he didn't have enough deep water. But and I didn't realize that until after I had finished building his exhibit. And at that point I said, I'm not taking the water out, I'm not taking the chance, so we'll just leave it how it is. But I really like how it turned out in the end anyways. And then you saw just a second ago where I added in the actual flooring that we will have in the interior of the underwater viewing area. And for that flooring, all I used was the Australian wood piece. I kind of think it may be like Australian driftwood or something like that. I really don't know. But it's just the 1 meter piece, I believe. I just use that and then just kind of overlap it with each other, so that way it creates the overlapped wood tiling effect. And then here we are working on the rocks, and I did that really quickly, just kind of skipped through bits and pieces of it. And then this is something you haven't really seen me mess with much on the channel. I know they exist. Trust me, I know they exist. I just, for whatever reason, I haven't made it a habit to use them in my builds. So I always forget that they exist, even though like subconsciously I know, hey, you should use decals. I forget. But I did go in and I added the decals you saw around where the water level would sit, and even in between the poles where the poles are holding the glass together. And then we will really quickly get into the foliage and everything. And while I'm doing this, I will go ahead and tell you how we ended up acquiring Rex. So Rex actually came to us from another zoo, and they ended up having to rehome him because he was too aggressive with their female. And they had them in separate enclosures, but he kept wanting to, he was just too aggressive with her, and it not mating wise or anything like that. It was just, he was just too aggressive. So they said, hey, we just need to get him out of here. And so they asked us if we wanted to take him, and we said, sure, we'll take him. And sure enough, we did. And so we made his enclosure and everything. And now Rex can live a long and happy life all by himself, because he couldn't play nice. But anyways, here I didn't want to add too much foliage, because I know realistically in most crocodile habitats, and even in some alligator habitats, they're very not foliage heavy, and they're more sandy and muddy and more natural basically, and not much hand planted foliage. So I went in and I just added some of the small cladding rocks with some of the bigger desert rocks on top to give that sort of more natural effect and kind of get away from all the foliage that I was going to add in there. And now we are actually planting the underwater viewing area. And as you can see, for this I used the underwater, I believe you pronounce it hydrilla plant, the underwater temple plant, and the underwater eel grass, I believe is what it's called. And for the temple plant, I did exactly what I did in the little penguin exhibit, where I just take the temple plant and I just copy it on top of each other vertically to make a really long one, and just kind of place those sporadically throughout. I make them shorter in the middle and taller on the outsides, as if the staff go in and cut the ones in the middle more often than they cut the ones on the outer rims of the underwater viewing area. But I really love how it turned out nonetheless. But hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. Before we begin, I just want to start by saying thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, but I also hope you enjoyed that little snippet at the beginning. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below. And also, the platypus is our second to last animal for the night house. We're almost done. We have one animal left. Let me know down in the comments what you think that animal will be. So let's go ahead and get into the actual build. So again, this is for the platypus. We end up with 2 females, and I'll go into a little bit more of their story in just a little bit. But Today I am currently working on the backstaging, the backstage water area. So they will have a backstage and a guest viewing water. And the backstage will be plastered or concreted, however you want to call it. And because I wanted it to act as if the platypuses needed to be off exhibit for any reason whatsoever, they could still have access to water in their backstage, and the staff wouldn't have to close down the whole entire night house due to the platypuses being sick or something like that. So they could still be in the building and still continue to keep the building open. Because again, this is a very low budgeted zoo. We need as much funding as possible, as many donations as possible. So we do our best to keep everything up and running as much as we can. And then there, I was kind of struggling a little bit to get the animal burrow where I wanted it closer to the water, but burrows and water don't really mix. Same thing with water and paths. So, but here I am working on a little bit of an underwater gate for the platypuses to swim through. So it's not functional in the game, but in real life it would be functional. But it's just Planet Zoo's hitboxes are massive. Like any content creator for this game has said before. I mean, even if you play the game, you know that the animal hitboxes are insanely massive. So I'm just gonna take the aluminum, I believe it's the aluminum New World sign and the marquee beams, and slide that into the wall and then drop it down just a little bit to act as if it's on like an automatic timer or something, so that certain times of the day, or if the staff need to close it off, they can. And then we're just gonna work on getting their enrichment and their terrain and getting them happy with their terrain and everything. And while we're working on that, I want to go ahead and tell you about about our two platypuses. So we have Tilly and Willa. They're a mother-daughter pair who were recently forced out of their home because their home flooded. And if you don't know much about platypuses, they generally live right alongside the water's edge, where it's kind of muddy and the soil is very soft. And so they live right there along that edge, so that way they can just come right out of their burrow and go straight into the water. The only bad thing with that is that a lot of times their burrows and their homes can be flooded if they get a lot of heavy rain or something like that. Their homes get flooded quite often. And these two girls actually fell victim of that. And our team was lucky enough to find them, and they were able to rescue them and brought them back to the sanctuary, so that way we can rehabilitate them and hopefully get them back into the wild, if they will ever be able to completely recover from their injuries. Alongside that note, the platypuses, the males actually also have poisonous spurs. I don't exactly know where they are at. I would assume in their mouth. If you know, let me know down below. But I do know they have poisonous spurs that they use to, whether it's steering mating or whether it's for territorial gain, they use them for all sorts of things. But also, the platypus is one of only 2 mammals to lay eggs, with the echidna being the second mammal that lays eggs. And now that we've kind of got that covered, let's talk about the actual build. So as you can see, we did the rock work, we did the underwater foliage. All I did was just use the temple plant, like going vertically how I've done for the saltwater crocodile, along with the penguin exhibit. If y'all want to go check those out, I'll leave a link in the top. But here I actually, again, since I was working with water for this exhibit, I wanted to get the water and the paths in first. So I got the water in, got the pathing in, and then I just went to crazy building. And I had got done with everything. I went to turn it to nighttime to see kind of where I needed the lamps to be at and everything. And I noticed that I didn't have the barriers or the walls in. So I quickly put those in and everything. And so that's what you see me doing here, is getting the walls to line up and everything. And then we will go in shortly with the barriers, not long after this. But I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the future plans for this zoo and even TVEP. So the Night House, we have one more episode left of actually, or two more episodes actually building for the Night House. We have one animal left, and then I still have yet to do backstages for any of these animals. So next week will be our last animal for the Night House, and then the week following that will probably be the backstaging video. And then I'm thinking maybe halfway, probably Wednesday or Thursday of the week after that, so 3 weeks from now would be the tour. And then that Saturday, when I'm actually supposed to upload, I will upload a build video, probably TVEP, since I haven't been in TVEP for a while. I really just wanted to get this project done, so that's why I've been so heavy in here. But also I've been stuck in a little bit of a lull with TVEP, where I want the next animal I want to add. I kind of struggled at first trying to get the logistics and everything figured out for that exhibit, but I've got it figured out. I've got it kind of figured out how I want it, so we'll get that done, and then I think we may hop back into TVEP in the next couple weeks or so. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and really quickly, you saw I'm just recoloring some of these panels and stuff that I've added in, and then I will move on to, I believe I add a little bit of some foliage, but also I go in here after in just a little bit and I add in some rocks to the center because I think it looks a little plain. And then we will create some puddles, like I did for the little penguin exhibit. So we're just gonna get the foliage. I found this tip from Sparrow. She swears by it, and I now swear by it too, where if you create a foliage palette, instead of having an actual foliage palette on the ground in your zoo taking up a whole bunch of space, you can create your own custom tags in the nature tab. So you can create an underbrush, a trees, a rocks tab, all sorts of whatever you want. And I think that's absolutely amazing. So we're just using my custom tags for Saguaro Sanctuary, and I'm going to go in and add in the trees and stuff that I want, keeping in mind that these trees need to be relatively low to the ground due to us being in a building. And then I went in with some of I believe they're from Caesar Creates, the mud wall set that I've used kind of throughout the Night House, and just kind of sunk those down in the ground a little bit. And then here we're gonna finally get to that middle section like I was talking about a second ago. And I'm just going to go, and I believe it's the emissive or immersive decal panel that I believe it's base game. And I forget it first, but you need to color this. You need to color the decal itself to black so that way there's no glow. And then just take the moss decals and put around it, and then recolor those to whatever soil, sand color, whatever kind of terrain paint you're using. Just recolor them to as close as you can to that, and then just kind of place them around. And from certain perspectives, they look like they're puddles. And I go absolutely crazy with the puddles because I wanted to make sure that this looked very wet, very soppy. Because again, the platypus, they generally live in very wet areas. And I mean, their homes live on riverbanks. So I wanted to kind of give the sense of their burrow was on, like, in a water pool. And now we are currently working on the barriers that we completely forgot until the very last second. So, hey everyone, Simply Logical here. I hope you enjoyed that intro, and I also hope you're having a great day. But let me go ahead and get started by telling you a little bit about their backstory. So, our family of quokkas consists of a mother named Sunny, a father named Ozzy, and their young Joey named Pip, who once lived happily on a small, secluded island off of the coast of Western Australia. Known for their friendly nature and perpetual smiles, these quokkas thrived in the island's lush underbrush, dining on native vegetation and hopping around with playful energy. However, their idyllic life took a drastic turn when an unexpected wildfire swept through the island, fueled by a combination of intense heat and dry conditions. The wildfire devastated much of the quokkas' habitat, destroying food sources and leaving them vulnerable to predators who had also lost their homes. The smoke and flames forced the quokkas to flee, becoming separated from the larger colony they once knew. Scorched and disoriented, the family found themselves in a dire situation where food was scarce and the young Joey was struggling to keep up. But fortunately for them, wildlife rescue teams, including Saguaro Sanctuary's very own, were conducting emergency evacuations and habitat assessments following the fire. While scouring the area, Saguaro Sanctuary's wildlife rescue team discovered the small family huddled together in a burned patch of vegetation. Clearly in need of help, Saguaro Sanctuary's very own rescue team stepped in, providing immediate medical care, food, and a safe environment to recover. So that's a little bit about our quokkas. They are healthy. They were not burned or injured in any way. They were a little bit disoriented, and they did have a decent amount of soot and ash on them. But they are completely healthy in every other way, and hopefully we can get them back into the wild with their very own colony soon. And as you saw in the beginning, I was finishing up the wall, and let me tell you, adding in that very last wall was so nice because, as you know, I've added in the wall as we go along with the episodes. And finally being able to fully finish the wall was very, very nice. But here I'm just going in and I create what is implied to be an automatic gate in case the quokkas ever need to be kept indoors, or if they need to be kept outdoors for any reason whatsoever. The staff can just move them all to either the interior or the exterior and just close the gate, and that way they cannot get in or out. And I do have 3 of these gates implemented throughout the habitat. I have one obviously right here, another one over in where their backstaging area will be, and a 3rd from the indoor habitat straight to their backstage. And then their backstage goes directly to the exterior. And for these gates, I just use I was going to try and use these square mesh panels, but I end up opting for the chain link mesh just because that's what I've used throughout the zoo, and I think that looks better. And then I just take that mesh panel and I outline it with the marquee beams, and then I will take the whole entire thing, put it in a group, and move it to where it is inside of the wall. And then I will take the gutter piece and recolor that to black, and I will use that as for the top to act as if the gate actually has something to go up inside of. And I can't believe if I said this before or not, but I do have 3 of them. One from the outside to their backstage, and then one from the inside into the backstage, and then that one from the inside to the outside. And now that we are working on the terrain, I want to go ahead and tell you a little bit about future plans for this zoo, for TVEP, for new zoos that I'm thinking of doing. So this zoo obviously is, now that I have added in all of the animals for the night house. Next week will be a detailing video, meaning I'll go in with like the backstaging for the quokka, the platypus, and the kiwi, and do a little bit for the Tasmanian devil. And then I will do a staff area for the actual staff and all that kind of stuff. And then I'll probably do some signage work and all that kind of thing. So it'll be just kind of like a hodgepodge of final details for the night house. And then the week after that will be the final zoo tour. Or not the zoo tour, the night house tour. And I'm kind of thinking I may drop the night house tour on like Wednesday in the middle of the week, and then do an actual build video that Saturday. Let me know what y'all think about that down below, if y'all would like for me to do that, or if y'all would like for me to just do the zoo tour Saturday, and then the week after that we'll go back to building in TVEP. And then so those will be the next 2 videos coming out, and then we'll go into TVEP for maybe a week or 2, and then come back and work on Saguaro Sanctuary some more. Because my plan, or my goal, is to have Saguaro Sanctuary completely finished by New Year's, which that is very plausible given I only have 5 habitats left, and then some extra habitats maybe along the way. That so there's only about 7 or 8 more episodes left of TVEP, or of Saguaro Sanctuary, sorry. And so that way, come New Year's, we can start the new year with the new zoo, which I've actually already been working on because I've been dying to work on this kind of zoo for a while. So I've actually already started it, and I've actually already have a couple episodes of that zoo finished. So, but yeah, so those are the future plans. And then now I am just working on the foliage, or finishing up on the foliage. And with this, so once I got done with that foliage, I was like, I I knew that the habitat was done itself. There was really no more building left that I needed to do, but the video was too short. So I went into a Discord that I'm a part of, and I asked what could I add, what can I implement to make the video longer. And Gunther from Gunther's Gaming, he mentioned that I could add in a petting area or a petting zone. And I asked him, I was like, well, I'm not really sure how I would go about that, given the fact that I loved the idea, but I'm not the best at doing stuff like this without an actual reference photo or something. So I just went and I asked him, I was like, what, like, how would I go about doing that? And he told me, just if you have a section, then just kind of take that section, add an animal talk, and then make like a gate or something, so that way the quokkas can go in and out as they please, and it can also be closed off if there's no petting allowed that day. I was like, oh, okay. So with that in mind, I immediately thought of this section right here, because there's not much going on there. It's by the wall, so there's really nothing for the guests to be blocking during the animal talk. So I put the animal talk over in the corner, and then I'm going to go in with the square mesh this time and outline that very similarly to how I did with the automatic gates with the marquee beams. And then I just take the marquee, because I wanted it to be a sliding gate. I at first played around with it being a swinging gate, but when it was a swinging gate, it hurt their traversable area quite a bit. So I changed my mind to do a sliding gate, and then so that way they could go in and out easier, but it also wouldn't hurt their traversable area too much. So I just take the gutter piece again and use that as the track for the sliding gate itself. And then I add in the gutter piece, end piece, whatever you want to call it, as a, I guess you could, as a stopping mechanism. And then I just I'll take the actual gate, the swinging gate, or the sliding gate, and move it up. And then I will add in the LED tube end cap pieces for wheels. That way it actually has something to go back and forth on. And then I'll take the hinge pieces and put that on the bottom of the standing gate. That way the gate itself can't go anywhere. And then that's really all I do besides go in with foliage after this, which for the foliage, all I use is the coastal pig's face, some bushes, and some other stuff. Hey everyone, Simply Zoological here. I just want to start by saying thank you for watching, and I hope you're having a great day. So as you can see, we are back with another episode of Saguaro Sanctuary. And in today's video, we will be finishing up the night house with some backstage detailing. And then next week, we will have our tour for the night house. And then from then on, it'll just kind of be a hodgepodge of whatever I feel like building for that week. But right now, as you can see, I am currently working on the fencing for the backstage. And it took me longer than it should have, I will admit that, just because I wanted the prongs for the metal fence itself to be very evenly spaced. But for this fence, I used the doubled up mesh panels along with some marquee beams and the metal mesh metal fence. But I was quite nervous to start on the backstage just because I haven't ever done a backstaging before. Or if I have, it was, I used blueprints off of the workshop. But this was my first time actually doing it myself. And I'm quite happy with not only myself, but with how I did it. I'm very proud that I was able to do it and it looked good. I was kind of nervous at first that it wouldn't look all that good, or that it would look almost too stylized and it wouldn't look very natural. But I was able to get it to look pretty natural, I feel like. But anyways, as you can see, we have finished the actual fence portion, and now I'm currently working on the door itself. And this door was actually a lot simpler than I thought it would have been, just because I was able to use the 1x1 meter mesh panels for the doubled up metal. And then I added some hinges onto the sides, so that way the door could actually open and close. And then for the handle, I wanted to use the conservation hook, but I decided that was too big. So I go in, I think, with the gutter cap or something like that, and recolor it to black, and then just copy that over to the other side. And although it still looks quite large, I like this more than I liked the handle or the hook. And then now I am working on building a sink and a counter. And the sink and counter was actually a lot simpler than I thought it would have been. And I was able to make one sink and one counter and just copy them for the rest of the backstages that we do in this video. And for the sink, I just used the wheelbarrow basin, and then I put the gutter drain inside of it, and then I used the spigot piece or the spouts, and then the LED end cap piece for the piping. And then for the counter, I used the New World sign, but I believe I go and I change that because the sign, as you could tell, it had those little attachments at the bottom, so that way it gets attached to a wall or something, and I didn't quite like that. So I think I changed it, but I'm not 100% sure. And then here, I just kind of played around with adding some sort of shelf underneath the sink, but I ended up not doing that. And then I go in with some buckets and just kind of recolor those so that way they're not all the same and everything. And I do really quickly want to mention that I was I ended up losing some footage just because I didn't record it, because I didn't realize that I wasn't recording. And so if you see some cuts that are quite large, which I think you see one here in a second, where this whole entire shelf is already cluttered, that's because I lost that footage, or I didn't record it. And as you can see, yeah, it cut automatically to the shelf being cluttered and everything, but that's okay because I do record me cluttering up the quokka and the platypus backstages. But now all I'm gonna add in after this is just the pumpkins in the basket, and I struggled getting this orange pumpkin into the to be completely in the basket and not be sticking out from either side. But I think I get it eventually. And then I add in, I think, a watering can next. And then I add in, I think, some clipboards, a ladder, so that way the staff could have something to climb up to the top if they don't want to worry about tipping the shelf over or anything. And then I just add some boxes and stuff of food that may not have been opened yet. And then, yeah, I just go in with some more clutter. And then here in a second, once we get all of this clutter and everything finished, I will go and work on the actual kiwi, the habitat portion of the backstaging. And yep, here we go. And so for this, I wanted to make a nesting box, and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted it to look like, so I just went on Google and searched like small animal nesting boxes and found one that I liked, and I just kind of used it and for reference. And I believe this is the Planet Zoo wood. I'm not exactly sure. And I used this wood over the Indonesian just because I think it has more of like a grunge look to it, to where the Indonesian can sometimes seem a little bit cleaner wood. But anyways, I'm just gonna finish up this night house, and once I finish it, I think I'm done, but I decide that I wasn't, and I wanted to add some more stuff to it. So you'll see a cut here in a second with two of them side by side. And so here, yeah, this is when I realized that, okay, well, maybe I'm not done. And so I wanted to add a ramp, so I raised it up off the ground. I sunk the side panels into the ground a little bit, so that way they could have a solid bottom. And then I add in some of the hay bales turned vertically, so that way it could act as hay. And then I add in a little egg, delete the egg from the other nesting box, and add some hay, and then it will be time for the quokka. And with this, I struggled with this door area for, I'd say, a good hour or so, because again, I wanted the metal fence prongs to be like the same distance apart, but I couldn't get them to be the same distance apart without them sticking through either to the door or through the fence post, the marquee beam on the left side. And so I end up having to shift everything to the right, I believe, and end up getting it all figured out. But yeah, no, it was a little bit of a struggle. As you can tell, I'm deleting and replacing, and I actually ended up redoing this twice, I believe, because I knew how I wanted it to be laid out, but I just couldn't quite get it to look the way I wanted it. But we eventually get it all figured out and settled. And then once we finally get all of this done, I will move on to the actual keepers area after I add in some concrete. And I do end up adding concrete into the entirety of all of the animals' backstages, just because I feel like it looks a little bit more industrial and a little bit more realistic. And then I will finally, here in a second, I should be able to get to the actual keepers portion after I add in this little like watch your step kind of thing. All I used was the 1 meter gutter piece in front of the door, because as you could tell, there's a little bit of a lip between the keeper backstage and the quokka habitat backstage. And then I'm just copying and pasting my sink and my counter over from the kiwi to the quokka, and then adding in some more rugs, but I end up deleting one of them. And then add in this pin board, and this pin board, again, it was off of the workshop, so I will leave the link to that down in the description below. along with anything else that I used off of the workshop for this build today. But yeah, and so I'm just going and copying and pasting some of the items that I've used in the kiwi portion to move over to the koala, and then I will go in and finally create some groups of baskets and boxes of fruit and stuff, so that way I could copy those to other backstages as well. Although the Tasmanian devil and the platypus are both carnivores, so they do not eat fruits and veggies. But here, just kind of pulling out some boxes so that way I can go ahead and finish all of the fruits and stuff that I wanted to add. And for these fruits, they honestly didn't take near as long as I thought they would have, because I had both the random rotation and the random rotation all turned on. So it was a lot faster and a lot easier to clutter up those bins and stuff. And then here I'm just recoloring some pumpkins. I end up deleting the big bottom one and the small one on the bottom as well, and I just add the white and the orange one and put those on the shelf, and then I clutter up the rest of the shelf with the rest of the fruit baskets and stuff. And then I think I make a banana basket, or a bag of bananas here in a second. And then after this bag of bananas, I believe I add to this box on the floor. I was gonna use those apples, but I decided on the pineapple and the watermelon, and I ended up using the cut up watermelon as if it had been previously cut, and it's ready to be given to the animals. And so I just took the slice of watermelon that has been cut off and put it onto a plate. For the plates, I just used the terracotta pot saucers. And then it's time to add in some tools to the backstage portion. I add in a ladder, recolor it, and then it's time to make an overflow area, because I thought this area was a little bit too plain compared to the koala backstage. So I add in an overflow area of food and stuff that has been delivered to Saguaro Sanctuary that was not eligible to fit into our main storage unit, which will eventually be added behind the kiwi backstage portion, because that wall ends up being a little bit too big or too wide, so I narrow it by adding in I think it's a 3x2 or something like that space behind there. And then here, just kind of start scouring my blueprints for a little bit more clutter. And again, all these blueprints will be left down in the description below, so make sure you go and check those out. But it is now time to add in some decals, and I learned with the kiwi that if you take everything off of the floor and then add your decals in, whenever you lower everything back down to the floor, it can give it a little bit more of a grunged look. Because especially with the carpets, because you can lower the carpets back down just a little bit up underneath the decals, and it kind of makes the carpets look a little dirty as well. And then once we get this done, I think it will be time for the platypus. And for this area, because the platypus is a carnivore, I wanted to add in a sink where they could wash any shrimp or any sort of meats that they will be giving the platypus. And then I do add in another sink as well. I make this one sink and then I copy it over to the other side. And as you can see, I'm kind of struggling a little bit to get these pieces all clicked, but I add in a drain, I add in a decal to kind of grunge up the bottom of the sink, and then I use the terracotta plant stands for the sponge that would be used to wash any food or anything like that. And then adding some legs, and then I will create a sliding door because I didn't like how the aircon vent was so big. I decided to create a sliding door to kind of cover it up, so that way they can store like any cleaning supplies or anything up underneath there. And then for the handle, I just use this small little hinge piece or bracket, and then I will copy this sink over to the right. And then I'm going in with some more decals to help kind of grunge up the counter itself. And then we will get on to the rest of the backstage portion for the platypus. And and then here I wanted to originally use that freezer on the wall of the fence, but I figured that looked a little unrealistic, so I moved it over to the actual wall itself. And then here, if you have not yet, I'm not sure if he's posted the video or not yet because I am doing this voice recording before the video has even been posted. But I joined Gunther from Gunther's Gaming along with 2 other amazing YouTube Planet Zoo content creators for a tour of his Igua Zoo. And when we toured it, in one of his backstages, he has this bin, the wheelbarrow bin, on the floor that's used to like wash the keeper's feet or anything off before they step into the actual habitat. So make sure y'all go and check that video out make sure you go check that video out, along with check out the YouTubers that I joined with, along with Gunther from Gunther's Gaming. I will leave all of them linked down below. And then here, just adding in some more clutter. Since the platypus is a carnivore, it was a little bit harder. I couldn't add in any like fruits or anything because they don't eat fruits or veggies. So I kind of just put some boxes and stuff as if they're boxes of meat or something. I know that's a little bit weird, but I didn't really know what else to put and I needed something there. So I just kind of threw stuff wherever I thought it should go. And then it was time for decals. And again, just raising everything up off of the floor so that way I could add the decals and then lower it back down and it would look more realistic. And then here, I decided as I was zooming over the pool, it needed some decals because it looked a little bit too new. And so I quickly add in some decals and everything to help with that. And then I will add in some bedding for the platypus. And I do not add in separate housing compartments for the platypus because we only have 2 females, and the only reason you would ever truly need to have separate housing compartments for the platypus is if you have a male and he were to be venomous or something like that. But here it is now time for the Tasmanian devil, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off because this is our last backstage area, but all I really do is just basically copy and paste everything over from the platypus exhibit because the Tasmanian devil is a carnivore as well. So hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the intro, but before we get into the video, I do have a couple of points that I would like to go over with you first. So first off, I want to say thank you to those of you who left your name suggestions down in the comments below of last week's video, which if you didn't see that, it was the kangaroo and wallaby walkthrough, which I am extremely proud of, and I will make sure to leave it linked in the top right about now. Secondly, I am going on vacation next week for Thanksgiving, so I will do my best to get a video out for next week, for next Saturday, but I cannot promise anything. Seeing as I'm leaving on Thursday, I believe, next Thursday, I don't know that I will have enough time to get a video done and be able to do the voiceover and everything before I leave for vacation. But I will try my best, and I will keep you updated if there are any changes. But that's all I think I have for now, so let's go ahead and get into the actual speed build. So as you can see, I am working on the building for our dingo habitat that you saw in the beginning. And I would just like to say, I absolutely love how this turned out, but it was an absolute pain to get it to look the way I wanted it. Going into this build, I had an idea in mind as to what I wanted it to look like, and I definitely pulled it off how I wanted it, but it took me probably 3 to 4 tries of redoing this same building for me to get it how I liked it. And in all honesty, I don't even know that what you're currently watching is my last rendition of this build. I think I might have deleted this build once more and redid it, but I didn't record it. So the building stays the same as you saw in the intro, but I think I might have changed a couple of things, but for the most part, it stays pretty much the same. But anyways, as you can see, I am currently working on the roofing, and so what I wanted for this build was I wanted, where you see all of the corrugated metal, I wanted it to be a storage containers for the dingoes to go in, like, so technically this is supposed to be 3 storage containers used in this one build. Because if you remember, Saguaro Sanctuary is a little bit more under budget, but now that the night house is complete, we have gotten lots of guests and we have been able to make a decent amount of money. So we were able to splurge a little bit more on this build, which you will see in the cinematics. But I also, so like I was saying a minute ago, I wanted this build to be a storage container for the dingoes. You have one storage container that was turned into a birthing chamber. So if the alpha female is pregnant, she can go in there to give birth, which we do have a cinematic of that in the end cinematics. So make sure you stay and watch those, because I am extremely happy with how the cinematics turned out. But the one that you're currently looking at is the one where each of the dingoes have their own pen, I guess you could call it. I can't remember exactly what the word is right now, but they can go in here and just hang out at night. This is technically where they would go to be fed and everything at nighttime. And then during the day, for them to go in and hang out and stuff, is the one that is directly to the left of this one. So there are 3 separate storage containers that I used in this build, but I absolutely love how it turned out. And as you can see right now, we have kind of jumped a little bit because I did the framing of the storage containers and a lot of the interior work off camera, because this video is already decently long for me, and it was originally gonna be like a 20-30 minute video, but I cut out a lot of footage so that way it wasn't super long. So if y'all want to see the entirety of the interior, which I do a whole backstage and everything, make sure you stay for at least the first cinematic that we have, because I do a full cinematic tour of the entirety of the interior along with a little bit of the exterior. But now that that's been said, as you can see right now, I am currently working on what are the you saw me a second ago working on the doors for each of the different pins that you can call for the dingoes. So what I'm doing now is to make the pins look like they are automatic. I've made switches for each of the pins. So each door goes to one of these cables, and if you switch the cable, then it will then open or close the door. So, and you'll kind of see in the cinematics, I go in and I number all the switches and everything like that. So, but you'll see all that later. So now that we're doing this, I'm just kind of adjusting these switches and stuff to make them line up and everything. And I am really happy with how this turned out. It was such a small detail, but it adds so much to the build. And here we are currently working on what I would consider the framing of the door. So the light gray around the door is the girder pieces that I used, and then the metal pieces that I'm working with currently are the marquee beams, as per usual. And I wanted a sliding door for each of the different pins that the dingoes have. That way the keepers can go directly to each pin without having to worry about the dingoes like getting out and stuff like that. So what I've done is I use the marquee beams, and then I take the mesh and use the mesh. I like double it up so it's long rectangles instead of small squares, which you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. And then for the sliding door portion, I use the LED tube end cap pieces for the wheels, which you can see me doing currently. And then once I get this done, I think we do a little bit more on the interior, because for the interior, I worked very hard on it. I think this is probably my best interior that I have ever done. I am extremely proud of myself and my use of pieces in this build. And again, all of that will be shown in the cinematics, because I wanted to record all of it, but when I put all the footage in, it was just such a long video. So I decided to just cut it all out and put it all into a cinematic. So please make sure you stay. I know I've said it a million times, but make sure you stay and watch it if you want to watch how I did the backstaging. If you don't care about that, then go ahead and click off once the video is done or whatever. But here you can see I'm currently working with the meshing, and then once we get this meshing done, I'll just copy this over and do the sliding door as well. And also, I would like to go ahead and tell you a little bit about how we have acquired these dingoes. So I've written a little something with the help of ChatGPT. I will admit, I struggled coming up with a backstory for these dingoes. So what I did was I went on ChatGPT and I asked, hey, what are some realistic scenarios that could happen in real life to cause dingoes to have to live in a zoo for the entirety of their lifetime? And ChatGPT gave me a list of some examples, and so I used those and came up with my own story. So I'm gonna go ahead and read you a little bit of what I've written for them. So, our dingo pack had been living near a rural livestock farm on the edge of the outback. After a dry season left them with dwindling prey and water sources, desperation drove them closer to human settlements. One night, the pack entered a fenced area, unaware that it contained electrified barriers and livestock guarding dogs. Startled and trapped, the dingoes suffered injuries from both the electric shocks and the attacks by the guarding dogs before escaping. Weak, wounded, and unable to fend for themselves, the pack faced starvation. But that next morning, a farmer discovered the injured dingoes and called the wildlife authorities. Recognizing their distress and injuries, rescuers took the pack to a wildlife care center where they received treatment for burns, puncture wounds, and exhaustion. Given the hostility towards dingoes in the area, authorities decided against releasing them back into the wild, and that's when Saguaro Sanctuary stepped in and provided a safe refuge where the pack could recover and live their lives out in peace. Now, healthy and thriving, the dingoes live as a family in a naturalistic habitat at Saguaro Sanctuary. Their story educates visitors about the challenges dingoes face from human-wildlife conflict and highlights the importance of coexistence and conservation efforts to protect native predators. Their names are Audrey, the alpha female, Arlo, the alpha male, and their older pups being Ava and Amelia, and their newest little pup being Amaya, which you will see in the cinematics. So again, make sure you stay for those because she is so cute and I cannot wait for y'all to meet her. But now, as you can see, so that was a little bit of the backstory on them. So they were injured and they were very hurt. They came to us pretty scared and pretty timid. But they've, with excruciating care and treatment for these guys, they have come around to humans a little bit more. They're still very timid and they won't go up to the fence all the way. But you may be able to get a good look at them hunting their prey or something in the habitat. But for now, it is almost time for me to sign off, but I do want to point out really quickly that as you see me planting, again, the cinematics is a full tour of the backstage, and I do 3 separate backstage areas, so make sure you stay for that. I am so proud of myself with how this entire thing came together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. As I'm sure most of you have noticed, I have been absent for a couple of weeks, and I would just like to talk about that really quickly. So for the last couple of months or so, my husband and I have been working on moving, and so for the last 2-3ish weeks we have been looking for a place to move into, and also we were on vacation for Thanksgiving. So with that being said, we have now found a place to move, so we are hoping to be moved and everything in the beginning-ish of January. So I have started to go ahead and start recording and trying to get scheduled some videos for the whole month of January. So if I'm not really active in the comments or anything in January, that is why. But also that leads me to say that we have some really exciting things for January that I'm really excited about. We'll be starting a new zoo, and which means that we're almost done with finishing this zoo. We have 2 episodes left, well, 3 technically, only 2 habitats left to build for. And then we have the final zoo tour, which will be, I believe, the last week of December. And then the first week of January will be our new zoo that we will be starting in January. But anyways, on to the speedboat itself. So as you saw in the beginning, I laid out the shell of the building that I am working with for these next 2 episodes. In this video, we are working on the cassowary side of things, but in next episode, we are working on the emu side of things. So the emus and the cassowaries are both in the same building, meaning their habitats are right next to each other. But that also gave me the opportunity to do something that I've never really, well, I've done it before, but not to this extent. If you recall the giraffe cafe that I posted for TVEP probably about a month or so ago now, that I did for Digital Blob's shell challenge that he had us do for the WWF Foundation fundraiser. You'll remember that I did a backstage walkthrough-ish portion, and I did something similar to that with the cassowary and the emu. And now that we are currently working on the foliage for this habitat, let me go ahead and tell you just a little bit about our cassowaries themselves. So we have a male and a female pair. The male, his name is Bindi, and he was accidentally hit by a car in Cairns, which, if you don't know, it's in the Daintree rainforest in Queensland. And he was brought to Saguaro Sanctuary for treatment and has since been fully recovered. Now, however, our female, her name is Sari, and she was attacked by a poacher and his dog. And Sari was able to escape with a gunshot wound, which needed immediate care, as you can imagine. But thankfully, a few good Samaritans found her and decided to bring her to Saguaro Sanctuary, where she has since been given the proper care and everything that she needs. And so now that both her and Bindi are 100% healthy, they have been put into the same enclosure so that way hopefully they can try and breed and raise some new baby cassowaries that we can hopefully release back into the wild. Which, if you are new here, Saguaro Sanctuary's whole mission statement is to rescue and rehabilitate Australia's most precious wildlife, and if possible, release them back into the wild. However, with Sari and Bindi, the injuries that they acquired during their accidents, it takes them out of the running of being able to be released back into the wild. So that's a little bit about them. I will say that I did not come up with that all on my own. I had some much needed help from that Aussie bloke over on the Gunter's Gaming Discord. I was lucky enough to be able to message him and say, hey, could you help me with a backstory for the cassowaries? And he gave me a couple different ideas, and I was like, thank you, I love those. And he was able to help me and everything, seeing as he is from Australia. But enough about that. Now let's go ahead and get into the backstage portion, which I was talking a little bit about earlier. So as you can see, I have sectioned off the guest area backstage from the staff backstage. So what I'm working on right now, if you watched the dingo habitat that I built a couple weeks ago, you will see this exact same layout, basically using the metal girders and the marquee beams and the mesh pieces to create windows into the backstage areas for the animals. However, in this case, I'm not using it for staff, I'm using it for the guests. So what I'm doing is because I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, I think I did, but I can't remember if I have or not. But the staff technically should not be in contact with the cassowaries, so I am blocking them off completely from the cassowary habitat itself. However, they can walk through and get a look into the cassowary's day-to-day backstage life. Same thing with the emu. They can continue this walkthrough from the cassowaries all the way through the emus and out the other side. Or vice versa, they can look at the emus first and out the cassowaries last. Just kind of depends on which way they travel through the zoo. But here, again, using the exact same technique as you saw me do with the blockage for the guests, I am now making a window and sliding door for the cassowaries themselves. And again, this is all basically a replica that I did from the dingo habitat, which I will leave linked right about now. So again, make sure you go and check those out if you haven't already. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel if you're new. And if not, then thanks for joining me again for another episode of Saguaro Sanctuary. So as I said in the intro, we are working on a habitat for the emu, which if you didn't see last episode, make sure you go and check that out, because this is the second half of that building that the cassowaries are also living in. So the cassowaries are just off to the right of where we're at currently, and then we will have the koala episode will be our next and final habitat build for this zoo. However, I encourage you to go and check out the cassowary build if you have not. I am personally really happy with how it turned out. I think that is probably one of my favorite habitats in this zoo so far. So again, I will leave a link at the top to go and check that video out if you haven't already. If you have, then that's great. Really quickly, I do want to point out that I'm sure you've noticed that this video may be a little bit slower than my normal videos. That would be because, given the fact that this is the second part of the same building, when you are doing 2 or 3 habitats in one building and you do the building in one habitat and then the next habitat is just the habitat, you don't have as much footage for the second habitat. So what I had to do was I wanted to have a little quarantine area in this zoo in general for any animals that are sick, really. And so what I did was I put them at the back of this building, which you will see at the end of this episode. So I did want to point that out, that could be the reason that this is a little bit slower. I think it was mainly only the fencing that was kind of slowed down, but everything else is a little bit faster, I believe. And also, if you didn't know, that fencing actually came from the kangaroo and wallaby walkthrough habitat that I did 2 or 3 episodes ago now. So that's where that came from. If you haven't, go check that video out too. I will have that one linked up as well. But yeah, that's really all we have going on in means of updates. So let me just go ahead and talk to you a little bit about the emus real quick. So as most of you know, if you're not new to this series, then you know that Saguaro Sanctuary is all about rescue and rehabilitating Australia's wildlife. So given that, our emus do have a backstory, and I want to go ahead and share that with you really quickly. So during a severe drought in the Australian outback, a large mob of emus migrated in search of food and water. While crossing a dry riverbed, a sudden dust storm swept through the area, which caused chaos and scattered the mob. In the confusion, 3 young female emus became separated from the group, which left them disoriented and exhausted. They wandered for days, unable to find their way back. With no water and little food, they grew weaker and more vulnerable to predators. But luckily, a team of wildlife researchers conducted a drought impact survey and discovered dehydrated and malnourished emus near an empty watering hole. Realizing the birds were unlikely to survive on their own, the team carefully transported them to a wildlife rehabilitation center. And despite efforts to track down their original mob, the emus could not be reunited. Hearing about this, Saguaro Sanctuary stepped in and offered them a permanent home, providing safety and space to thrive. And their names are Nova, Rhea, and Zara. So those are our female emus. That's a little bit about them. And now you can see that we are working on the quarantine area that I was telling you about just a bit ago. So for this, very similar to the cassowary and dingo build, I will link the dingo build up as well if you haven't seen that one yet either. Just using the metal plank walls and the metal girders, and then marquee beams in the middle of the girders, and then taking the mesh and using that as the fencing. So again, really simple, really easy, and it looks really nice. Here I'm creating a little bit of a doorway, and that's really all I do for this video. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. As I'm sure you saw and heard in the thumbnail and the intro cinematics, we are working on the last build video of Saguaro Sanctuary. And as bittersweet as this is, I am very excited for the new project that will be coming out in January. But for now, let's talk about what I am currently working on. So for this build, I knew what I wanted going into it, so all I had to do was find a reference photo, which for me is usually no problem, right? But the thing was I couldn't find a reference photo of a lookout tower that I liked enough to use. So I decided to use a multitude of photos instead of a single reference. And that's what we are currently working on, is the lookout tower, which is in fact climbable. I have some cinematics of the koalas climbing, so make sure to stay tuned for that. I did, however, have to go in after I got done building this to change the ladder that I make later on. I had to use, instead of the Indonesian wood, I used the European wood beams, which the coloring and everything is fine, so it really wasn't that big a deal. I was a little bit upset when I realized that they couldn't climb, and I changed the ladder out and I was like, oh, it's fine. But anyways, here I am currently working on the base of the lookout tower, which now that we've had this little cutscene, you can see that I've changed a little bit. All I did was add a rim on the outer side of the support poles, and then I moved the support beams onto that rim itself instead of in between the support poles, if that makes any sense. And here we are currently working on the ladder itself, which, as you can see, I am still currently using the Indonesian stained wood, which I do know is not climbable. I don't know why at the time I thought it was, but I do go in later and change it off camera to the European wood, I believe, or the East Asian wood, sorry, is what I end up using for this. And I end up having to change out this platform and everything too to climbable pieces as well, so that way the koalas can actually walk along the, or technically climb on the platform, because it's not big enough for their hitbox even with PZ Plus installed. But I had so much fun building this. Like I said, I knew what I wanted going into this build. I knew I wanted a lookout tower of some sort. I didn't know exactly how I wanted that lookout tower to look. I just know I wanted the staff or the guests to, in theory, be able to go up and look out and see the entire zoo from up here. However, the guests can't actually access this, seeing as it is inside of the habitat itself, but you get the point. And here we're just working on the fencing for this middle platform. So because I have 2 ladders, one on each side, as you saw in the intro, I'm sure. And so the first ladder goes all the way up to the middle platform, and then the second ladder goes up to the actual top of the lookout tower. And I do really like how this turned out. I think it turned out way better than I thought it would. I wasn't quite expecting it to turn out so good. I figured it wouldn't be too hard to build, but you never know in Planet Zoo. You could think that something will take 30 minutes and it ends up taking you an hour, you know? But yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and I truly had a great time finishing off this zoo. As I'm currently doing this voiceover, the entire zoo is fully complete, final details, everything is completely done. And we're actually planning on doing the zoo tour the weekend that I'm currently recording this voiceover, because y'all won't see this video for another week, I believe, for me. And so by the time y'all see this voiceover, I will have already done the final tour and all that stuff. But again, this was so much. I love doing this project. The entire project alone was very fun. It challenged me in my building skills, and I think I learned a lot from this whole entire project. And in the tour, you will see that, because I did like an overhead bird's eye view a couple days ago, and I was looking, and you can tell how the architectural style has changed from when the zoo first opened to it now being done. How more money has been brought in so they can spend a little bit more on buildings and stuff like that. And you can definitely tell the older buildings versus the newer buildings, and I love how it gives that storytelling implement into the video. But yeah, that's really my little spew about this project. I'm sure I'll talk more about it in the zoo tour this weekend, but enough about that for right now. Let's get back to the build. So here you can see we have completely finished the lookout tower. And now we are currently working on the fencing for this habitat. I do want to point out that I struggled so badly with this fencing, because as you see to the right of us currently, you can see that the fencing that I used for the dingoes, the kangaroos and wallabies, the emus, and the cassowaries. And seeing as this habitat was so close to the emu, cassowary, and the walkabout, I didn't want to use that exact fencing again because I felt it would have been too repetitive. So I tried 3 or 4 different styles of fencing, and I didn't like any of them. One of the first ones that I tried, I posted in the Discord, and I looked at it after I'd posted it, and we made it look good and everything, and I decided that it was a little too modern for this zoo. And so I was able to settle on this that I completely came up with all on my own. I think I might have seen a reference photo for this, and that kind of inspired the top portion, but for the most part, this fencing was probably the hardest fencing I've ever put together, just because I had no idea what I wanted for the fencing. Because I didn't want the fencing to be too tall, because otherwise the guests wouldn't be able to see the lookout tower. And I needed it to be tall enough so that way the koalas couldn't climb out of the exhibit. And I kind of think I hit it right in that sweet spot to where it's not too tall, not tall enough kind of a thing. And I am absolutely in love with it. And I do also want to note that any fencing anything that I made for this zoo will be uploaded as its own file on my workshop, probably the first week of January-ish or so. After the zoo tour and everything, I will get to work on uploading all of the files and everything of anything that I have made specifically for this zoo in the Saguaro Sanctuary collection on my workshop. So make sure y'all check that out, as well as I also have to go in and add in any other habitats that I haven't added in yet. But now that we're on the foliage, we have just a couple minutes left, so really quickly I want to tell you about our koalas. So as I said in the intro, they do have some trust issues, and we're gonna go ahead and get into that right now. So we have 2 females and 1 male who were taken from the wild as juveniles by an unlicensed roadside zoo operating in poor conditions. The facility kept the koalas in small, barren cages with no climbing branches, fresh eucalyptus, or proper shelter. They were exposed to harsh weather, denied medical care, and displayed to visitors with little regard for their well-being. Malnourished and suffering from untreated illnesses, the koalas grew weak and withdrawn, their health deteriorating rapidly. But luckily, after multiple reports from concerned visitors, wildlife authorities conducted a surprise inspection and shut down the facility. The koalas were among the first animals rescued due to their critical condition. They were rushed to a wildlife rehabilitation center where veterinarians treated them for malnourishment, infections, and severe stress caused by prolonged mistreatment. Due to the extent of their trauma and inability to survive in the wild, they were deemed unfit for release. And that's when Saguaro Sanctuary stepped in after hearing about their sad story, offered the trio a forever home, creating a spacious eucalyptus-filled habitat designed to mimic their natural environment with specialized care and plenty of space to climb, rest, and explore. The koalas slowly regain their strength and their trust in humans. And their names are Benny, Cleo, and Sky. So that's a little bit about our koalas. They do have a little bit of a rough history, so when you come to the zoo, they may be a little bit weary of you. They've grown fonder of our zookeepers just because they see them every day and they know that they are truly cared for here. But anyways, that's all I really have for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope you leave a like, subscribe, comment, all the YouTube stuff, and I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, seeing as we have just a couple seconds left, and leave y'all with the cinematics. I will talk to y'all later.